The origin of humanity is a total mystery. No one really knows how old humanity is, or how and where it originated. It is a complete enigma. Suppose modern humans only evolved 200,000 years ago, as the hypothesis would have us believe. In that case, one must ask how human-made artifacts can be found in substrata originating millions of years ago. Thousands of these artifacts have been stored in museums' basements around the world. Although these extraordinary discoveries are bizarre, they are not unique or even rare. They are, right now, gathering dust, locked away from prying eyes in the vaults of museums throughout the world. These artifacts have been ignored, or, as is often the case, have not been thoroughly examined. Many of these artifacts have been discovered in coal. That coal is a byproduct of decomposing vegetation is a fact currently accepted by geologists and scientists. Over time, the vegetation becomes buried and covered with sediment. Eventually, the sediment fossilizes and becomes rock. To accomplish this natural process of coal formation takes up to 400 million years. Therefore, if an artifact, or anything else for that matter, is found in coal lumps or seams, it must have been dropped into the vegetation before it was buried in sediment. In 1944, Newton Anderson dropped a lump of coal in his basement and it broke in half as it hit the floor. Based upon current scientific orthodoxy, what he discovered inside completely defies explanation. Inside the coal was a handcrafted brass alloy bell with a sculptured handle and iron clapper. After careful analysis, scientists found that the bell was made from a very odd mixture of metals. The metals, including selenium, copper, iodine, arsenic, tin and zinc, are different from any known modern alloy production. Even odder is that this lump of coal was mined from a seam estimated to be over 300 million years old. There are many other unusual reports, including the story of a Colorado rancher who, in the 1800s, discovered a strange-looking iron thimble in a broken lump of coal. The coal was dug from a vein some 300 feet below the surface. Another ancient puzzle was found in an Austrian foundry in 1885. Like the others, a workman broke open a coal block and found a metal cube embedded inside. Recent analysis established the object, now known as the Salzburg cube, was forged of iron and obviously handcrafted. The coal it was found in is millions of years old. The list of such items is never-ending, but coal seams are not the only place strange artifacts have turned up. In 1889, while workers were boring an artesian well near Nampa, Idaho, a baked clay statue was extracted from a depth of 330 feet. To arrive at this depth, workers had to cut through 15 feet of basalt lava and many other strata below. That might not seem unusual, however, when you consider the very top layer of lava was dated to at least 15 million years old, it suddenly becomes evident that this discovery is not just unusual, it's highly unusual. In the mid-1950s, while workmen were digging a well in Guthrie, Oklahoma, farm owner Alain K. Ecker discovered a peculiar object covered in red clay. After washing off the mud and clay, Ecker soon realized she was holding a figurine of a bearded man, robed and holding a lamb. An expert in wood carving later told her that the artifact had been shaped from an extinct tree harder than ebony. However, no one could identify the figure of the ancient statue. After pictures were circulated quite some time later, Mrs. Ecker was told by two Chinese students at a nearby college that the figurine represented the Chinese god of longevity, Shaoxing. The students considered the idol to be the earliest representation of a god esteemed as a deity many centuries before Christ. About 1910, at Animas River in Flora Vista, New Mexico, a young boy dug up 2 slabs of carved rock while playing in the 800-year-old tribal ruins. The slabs contained depictions of several indigenous animals and some text in an unknown language. Two animals with tusks, a trunk, and floppy ears obviously represent elephants. This revelation caused a debate that has raged unabated ever since. How can someone draw an elephant without ever having seen one? Near Tucson, Arizona, on September 13, 1924, Charles E. Manier found the first of what would prove to be a series of bizarre artifacts. Among the 27 artifacts are a crescent cross, a spear-headed serpent cross, and 9 swords or sword fragments. The language, according to experts, appears to be a variant of Latin that was popular up to AD 900. However, the Latin engravings record a memoir of travels that make no sense. To add confusion rather than clarification, a few Hebrew words were thrown in here and there too. Again, we are left striving to explain strange hybrid artifacts. On July 22, 1882, the Scientific American informed us of odd pre-Indian relics from Virginia. The items were found between the Blue and Allegheny mountain ranges near Mount Pisgah, North Carolina, and are unique. They consist of mainly human and animal figures in various degrees of relief. However, household utensils were also discovered. They are so perfectly carved, they seem to have been made by metal instruments. These human figures were not fashioned in the typical American Indian style, a fact the Scientific American would later confirm. Instead, they were fully clothed in tight-fitting garments. Some of the figurines appear to be seated in armchairs. Others can be seen straddling a remarkable variety of animals, including bears, prairie dogs, and birds. But then comes the zinger. Some riders are seated on 2-humped camels, rhinoceroses, and hippopotamuses. Either the artisan had seen representations of these animals, seen them in the flesh, or he was clairvoyant. The Scientific American hazards a guess that the objects were made by an earlier civilization that was partially destroyed after the first settlers came to America. According to conventional academia, the earliest upright biped humanoid, Homo erectus, only appeared about 1.8 million years ago, whereas dinosaurs roamed the Earth between 65 and 225 million years ago. Therefore, it is an accepted belief that humans and dinosaurs did not coexist. However, paleontologist Stan Taylor began excavating fossilized dinosaur footprints in the Paluxy Riverbed near Glen Rose, Texas in 1986. Inexplicably, in precisely the same Cretaceous fossilized strata as the dinosaur tracks were well-preserved human footprints. This discovery completely shocked and dumbfounded the scientific community. The immediate reaction of scientists, archaeologists, and evolutionists was to claim the find was a hoax. They are dinosaur footprints that have been eroded to look human, or they were carved into the rock by hoaxers, are two of the most common arguments put forward. However, when one asks why only the human prints were eroded and not the 3-toed dinosaur prints, their line of reasoning falls somewhat flat. Furthermore, when one considers the human footprints continued under bedrock that was later removed from the side of the riverbed, we have to ask, how on earth could a hoaxer pull off this impossible feat? Since the initial discovery, both in Paluxy and in many other places around the globe, hundreds more human footprints have been discovered. Do these supposed hoaxers have the time and the budget to go jet-setting around the world? These tracks are getting harder and harder to explain. There is, however, another discovery that blows all the others away concerning age. Near the small town of Ottosdal in Western Transvaal, South Africa, miners have been digging up hundreds of mysterious metal spheres for decades. The spheres, measuring between 25 and 100 millimeters in diameter, are etched with 3 parallel grooves running entirely around their equator. 2 types of spheres have been found. The first is solid bluish metal with flecks of white. The second is hollow and filled with a white spongy substance. These objects, known as the Klerksdorp spheres, are reportedly so finely balanced they would need to be made with modern technology in a zero-gravity environment to attain these characteristics. Geologists have tried to explain these artifacts as limonite concretions or natural formations. They fail to sufficiently explain how these formations occurred naturally with flawlessly straight and flawlessly spaced grooves around the centers. Perhaps the real reason for such intense debunking is that the rock in which these spheres were found is pre-Cambrian and dated to 2.8 billion years old. How does a modern-looking hammer become embedded in rock that formed 400 million years ago? Max Hahn and his wife Emma walked beside a waterfall near London, Texas in June 1936 when they noticed a piece of wood protruding from a rock. What they found within, after they had cracked the rock open, shocked the archaeological and scientific community. For embedded in the rock was what seemed to be some type of ancient human-made hammer. After archaeologists had analyzed the rock encasing, they dated it at 400 million years old. If that isn't strange enough, the hammer itself was dated 500 million years old. Furthermore, parts of the wooden handle were so old they had begun the metamorphosis into coal. The hammer's head is far purer than anything nature could have achieved without assistance from relatively modern smelting methods. Roman coins have been discovered in tribal burial mounds as far west as Illinois. Dr. Valentine Belfiglio, a Texas University professor, wrote an article, "Circumstantial Evidence in Support of an Encounter Between Ancient Texans and Ancient Romans." Dr. Belfiglio had been scouring the Galveston Daily News archives when she discovered records of a mysterious shipwreck. Apparently, in 1886, a ship was uncovered during harsh storms that looked Greco-Roman in construction. On July 9, 1886, the Galveston Daily News reported, "The ship's stern is built in such a manner as to contradict any reasonable supposition that it was a vessel fashioned as early as the 16th century. The ship is totally unlike any craft coming within the category of modern construction. It is composed of the most massive solid oak beams, fully 6 or 7 inches in thickness, laid crosswise over each other and fastened with enormous iron spikes." Shortly afterward, Dr. Belfiglio and others embarked on an expedition to search for Roman artifacts on St. Joseph Island. On September 5, 1993, in the Galveston Bay area of the island, an ancient coin was unearthed 8 inches below the surface and 25 feet from shore. From the inscription on the coin, a team of experts identified the language as Latin. The image and inscription on the coin indicate that it was minted 1,900 years ago, during the reign of Emperor Trajan. Belfiglio cites accounts of Roman coins unearthed in Texas, such as the round rock coin, which was discovered at the bottom of an Indian mound dated approximately 800 AD. Belfiglio also cites apparent linguistic and cultural similarities between the Romans and the Karankawa Indians. It sometimes seems that everywhere we look we find things that can be explained, just not in the way science would like to explain them.